Okay. Okay, so reviewing the 12.3 milestone, the first two issues on there, Dan and I added the deliverable tags last Friday. These are two issues that came from the HackerOne report. I won't go into details since we're recording this now, but if you haven't taken a look at those issues, you take a look at them. They're the top two issues in the 12.3 milestone. The next one's actually, I think Gigi's been making really good progress on this one, the delete only selected tags from the container registry. This one is about, there's this Docker limitation that when you delete one tag, it deletes all tags with the same image ID, or the same tag ID rather. And it's one of our most popular issues. People have been complaining about it for a long time. Nick made some front end changes to help accommodate that, but really didn't solve the core problem. And this should address the core problem. And the implementation that we're working through is by creating, when a user tries to delete a tag, it will create a dummy tag. It'll move it, and then it'll delete the moved one, I believe is how it's working. So it's a little trickery that we took on from how our users were doing this, and Gigi just coded it into how it works on our platform.
Those first two HackerOne issues, would those be categorized as bugs probably?
Yeah, yes, I think they should be.
Okay, I can add those labels. I was just kind of curious looking over them.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think those labels just came in when the reports were filed.
Sure.
But they should actually have the bug tag too. That's a good point. Okay, the next one is really Ian and I have been working on, which is, one of the things that came from us doing user research about the container registry was that the UI itself didn't necessarily have the data that users were expecting to see, and didn't really have data that was leveraging what our advantage of being GitLab and having a container registry are, where users are building images using CI, they're tying it to specific branches or commits, they're using the commit shot to tag their images oftentimes, and we're not surfacing any of that data. So we went through and we've identified what are all the different data points for the container registry, sort of generic GitLab data that we might want to surface to the user. And then as well as we thought through at least briefly, NPM, Maven, and Conan in terms of what metadata we would want to show. And so now it's like an information architecture question. How do we display that data? How does it make sense? And how do we turn that into a user interface that's useful for our users? So I think this one, Ian and I are almost done on this. I think we just need to fill in some of the definitions and then share it with the team and get some feedback on what everybody thinks, and then probably go through and see what's available, what's not available, and what engineering works needs to happen to make that data available. So it's kind of exciting. It's probably a big can of worms when we actually start to dig into it, but excited to think that we could start to surface this information for the user. And Ian, you had some ideas about doing like a card sort and some other UX research type of things, right?
Yeah, so once we get a chance to review, I might put together a survey so we can actually go out to our users and get quantitative data saying, what is most important, what's not. I'd love to take that as the next step for kind of figuring out the IA there.
Okay, cool. Cool. The next one's kind of nebulous, and Nick actually opened this issue. It's improve the container registry table UI, and he had some ideas in there. I kind of muddied the issue by throwing in some of our competitors' UIs and things we would like to see, and that's where the idea for the data model came. I'd like to see what we can, and I talked to Dan about this on Friday, we'd like to see maybe we can make some improvement to the container UI for this iteration, but we're not, I don't know, I think we need to keep iterating on this issue. And maybe we could, Nick had some really good ideas, and maybe we could just implement a couple of them, and that would still be useful. And if we could have it in a better state, it doesn't have to be oh, Tim said, look at CodeFresh's UI, implement all of that on day one. I think we could take some small steps. So Nick, when you hear this, or Ian, could you go through that issue and see if you can identify some smaller changes for Nick that could be useful?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, cool. I'll do the same as well, and not try and muddy it this time. The next one is the authenticate with CI job token for the NPM registry. Actually, I had a question about this, Steve. I don't know do we need to do anything here once the personal access token is enabled?
I'm not sure. I'll have to try a couple things out to see what works and what doesn't.
Okay. Yeah, because that was when I went through and did the permissions model, I saw that the job tokens just inherit the permissions of the user, but I wasn't sure if that meant that it was OAuth enabled and it would work with NPM and all those things.
Yeah, I think there still might be some things to do, because when NPM makes the API call from the CI, it still expects some sort of an OAuth validated token.
So it might be changing the header or something like that, like we had to do with
Yeah.
that. Okay.
It might be very similar to that.
Cool. The next one on there is for the data collection. So we found out in 12.2 we had this issue originally scheduled, and turns out that we are collecting page views. And I talked to the data team, and I got a self-help guide on how to put together the Periscope dashboard for some data. So I'm going to work on that, but separately, it's time for us to start tracking some of the other data so we can make more informed decisions. So I wanted to pull this one in and prioritize it for the team. It seems like another messy one because there's a bunch of metrics in there. We could work through the P2s in this case for this iteration, which are mainly, let's see, I haven't looked at this issue today, like number of build or push events if possible, number of images deleted, number of garbage collection commands executed if we're able to tell those. So yeah, I would start with the P2s for the container registry ideally, since that's where we're making the biggest investment over the next couple of months. So if we had that data, that would be ideal. And separately, I could get started on the dashboard so that when those things are added, hopefully I could just add them to the dashboard as well once we start collecting that data. Okay. Okay, next one is a follow-up to an issue we had in 12.2, which was an API endpoint to list images and tags at the group level. This next one is for listing the packages at a group level. So our Maven and NPM packages at the group level. I like this one because I think it will enable us to think through what does a group level user interface look like. Once we think about, we do the API first, and then we could do the user interface after that. But yeah, and it may be more than one endpoint. It might be a separate endpoint for Maven and NPM. But generally, the idea was to create the group level endpoint.
Cool.
And then the last two, this one is a bug that came up that Dan prioritized on Friday. It was a P2S2. This user's having a specific issue running garbage collection and using DigitalOcean as the backend. So we wanted to investigate that. And then the other one is the Redis work that's been going on. I know, Steve, you've been working on that as well.
Yeah, so on that one, it seems that there might not really be much of anything to do because there really isn't any heavy Redis usage at this moment in anywhere in the package code. So we might be kind of good at this point where, we've looked around and haven't found anything. So we might be able to call it good for now.
Oh, sweet. I would say I could add more things from forward, but I think some things are going to be pulled into 12.3 likely, right? Like the Conan work is probably going to get pulled in. Anything else? I see any of the other 12.2 issues that'll get pulled in. I see the API endpoint for the Docker or the group level view for Docker images and tags. Is that one you think will be done in 12.2?
Yes, that should be, that's going to get merged today. Should get verified this week and be good by the end of the week.
Okay. So really it might just be just the Conan stuff and then maybe some documentation things that Axel didn't get the chance to get to yet.
Sounds right to me.
Okay. So what do you think of this iteration? Does it seems okay? Seems like the right amount of work? Cool. So the other thing on the agenda is just real quick. So I just wanted to go over the kickoff document just to make sure it's updated. I'll be recording the video today, but for 12.3, I'm going to talk about the MVC for Conan. I'm going to talk about authentication with CI job token to the NPM registry, the deletion of only selected tags, and the public API endpoint to list packages of a group. Do you think I missed anything? Do you think I don't think we should typically talk about security issues or identifying a data model or collecting data. Does that make sense? For publicly to only talk about the primary issues that we're delivering. Okay. Separately, Steve, you and I talked to a customer on on Friday, and we were talking to them about how they're running garbage collection and removing tags. And it's funny because I've been talking to users for over a month about this now and going back and forth with users on the issue. And I think I've always been anchor biased to this idea that we can't do garbage collection and we can't do retention policies because GitLab itself can't do it because we can't have downtime. But in fact, our customers can have downtime, and they're doing this now. They're running garbage collection now. They're running the API to programmatically untag images. Is there anything stopping us from doing a retention and expiration policy and automated garbage collection for self-managed instances?
That I think will need a brief investigation, but I don't think there should be anything stopping us from doing that.
Yeah, I had this I was so happy on Friday having this realization where I'm like, oh, all these users we can help, all the, where we are still blocked, but we could launch maybe, of course, it still might need some verification. But then if we could do that, that may help us solve how we approach that problem for GitLab.com in the future too, because we could talk to those users, we could test and iterate, and it gives us a good way of engaging with some of our larger enterprise customers who are having this problem right now. Okay, so I think that sort of changes how I was looking at 12.4. For 12.4, I was starting to think more about what do we do for Maven and for NuGet. And now I think I might try thinking more about how we do retention policies and garbage collection for self-managed instances.
Yeah, I think if we can do maybe a proof of concept to make sure that that's a valid thing that we can do.
Yeah.
Maybe have that proof of concept be in 12.3, and that can justify whether or not it should be a full item in 12.4 or not.
What would that proof of concept look like? Is that just
I mean, it's mostly just kind of the investigation to make sure that that idea is true, where, if you are on a self-managed instance and you have the ability to have some downtime and deal with these things, would the policies and all those changes work as expected, or is there something we're missing?
Okay, maybe what I'll do today then is just open up a quick issue without thinking through like what are all the different variables that people want to do this on, and just like have an investigation task that says, is it possible for self-managed instances to do this?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds cool. And then I think we have a lot to go off of from our user research too, of how people would want to do automated garbage collection and expiration and retention policies. So I think we could if it works, that would be an awesome feature to prioritize in 12.4. Okay, well, anything else that anybody wanted to cover for this meeting? No? John, are we getting back on Rails training this week, hopefully?
Yeah, a lot of folks have been declining lately, so I just have been kind of following that lead. But yeah, I'm happy to do it, or if we want to stay async, whatever works best for everybody. Happy to do that for sure.
I'm going to try to get back to my 30 minutes to an hour each day, and then this way by Friday I'll make some progress.
Yeah, me too. It's tough when other priorities come up, right?
Yeah, exactly. Especially with time off, it's like, oh, well, I'm catching up for the next several days. But
yeah, right. I remember. Yep, been there too.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone. This is really helpful for me, and I'll talk to you all later.
Awesome. Thank you.